Right. Diving into some pretty dark territory today, huh? Try and understand the man behind some of history's worst atrocities, Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, a figure who still fascinates and horrifies us even decades later.
Exactly. And we're going beyond the usual dictator narrative here. Our source material, The Hidden Side of World War II, The Last Secrets of the Nazis, gives us these intriguing glimpses into his early life.
Before the name Hitler became synonymous with evil.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So instead of the Führer, the tyrant we think of, where does this deep dive into Hitler begin? A failed artist, is that right?
It's true, he saw himself as a painter, dreamed of artistic greatness, even applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, completely convinced of his own talent.
Really? An artist turned dictator. What a strange path. I mean, was he any good?
Not according to the Academy, they rejected him outright.
Ouch, that's got to sting.
It wasn't just a setback for him, it was a crushing blow. Remember, this was a man who believed wholeheartedly in his own genius.
Yeah, the excerpts mentioned a quote from Mein Kampf about that very rejection.
One of the worst days of my life, he called it. That's how deeply it affected him.
Wow. You can practically see the resentment building, right? That bitterness toward a world that didn't recognize his supposed brilliance.
And this is where the context of the time becomes crucial. We're talking about Vienna in the early 1900s, a breeding ground for anti-Semitism.
Right, it wasn't just casual prejudice back then. It was practically woven into the fabric of society.
Exactly. And you can see it in publications from the time, like the Deutsches Volksblatt newspaper. The excerpts were chilling. They blamed Jewish people for everything wrong with society.
Scapegoating at its finest, or worst, I guess, painting them as this existential threat.
A disease, they called it. And this hateful rhetoric wasn't just abstract for Hitler, it was the backdrop of his life, especially as he struggled with poverty, even homelessness.
So while he's barely surviving, this ideology offers him a target for his anger, someone to blame for all his misfortunes.
Precisely. And unfortunately for the world, that dangerous seed found fertile ground in the chaos of World War I. He went from this directionless, failed artist.
To a decorated soldier, if I recall.
He even received the Iron Cross for his service. It became this point of immense pride for him.
A symbol of belonging, finally finding his place.
And that's what's alarming, this potent mix of a wounded ego seeking validation within a horrific ideology, especially as that ideology was gaining traction in a defeated, demoralized Germany after the war.
So no longer just an art school dropout. We've got a decorated veteran with dangerous ideas. What happens when the structure of the war is gone?
That's when he crosses paths with a less-known but pivotal figure, Karl Mayr, an army officer.
And Mayr sees potential in this disgruntled veteran.
In a way, Mayr was obsessed with rooting out left-wing ideology in the army, and he saw something in Hitler, tasked him with identifying potential threats.
So Hitler is basically an informant now. That's quite a turn.
Essentially, yeah. Played right into his paranoia, that need to root out enemies. And Mayr, unknowingly, pushed Hitler further down this path, even arranged for him to attend lectures at the University of Munich.
Exposing him to even more extreme ideologies.
Exactly, and it's in this period that we see his hateful rhetoric coalesce into an actual plan. There's a chilling letter from 1919 where Hitler explicitly outlines his goal, the irrevocable removal of Jewish people from Germany.
No more dog whistles at this point. That's just straight up terrifying intent.
Absolutely. The seeds of the Holocaust, as unfathomable as it is, were planted long before he had any real power.
So we've got the failed artist, the decorated soldier, the informant, all wrapped up in this horrific ideology.
Yeah.
How does he go from writing radical letters to commanding the attention of crowds? How does this fanatic become Hitler?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer, surprisingly, lies in a Munich beer hall.
A beer hall. It's not exactly the image that springs to mind when you think of the rise of Nazi Germany.
No, it does seem a bit incongruous, doesn't it? But this wasn't just any beer hall. We're talking about Munich in 1919, a city teeming with political turmoil after the war.
Right, a breeding ground for all sorts of ideologies and movements.
Exactly. And the army, still very concerned about potential uprisings, tasked Hitler with infiltrating one of these groups.
Still the informant, gathering intel.
Precisely. The group was called the DAP, which would later become the Nazi Party. They were a small, insignificant group at that point.
So Hitler's going to these meetings, blending in with the crowds, taking notes. I still can't picture him as a captivating leader at this point.
And you wouldn't have. He was there to observe, not to lead. But during one meeting, something happened that would change everything. The speaker that night was going on about Bavarian separatism.
So basically arguing for independence for the rest of Germany.
Exactly. Now imagine how that went over with a man who just fought and bled for a unified Germany.
I'm guessing not well.
Let's just say Hitler wasn't known for his restraint. He jumps up, interrupts the speaker, launches into this impassioned, completely unscripted tirade about German unity, national pride.
Sounds like something he's got a lot of pent-up frustration about.
You could say that. No, you'd think this outburst would get him thrown out, blacklisted even, but instead,
The crowd loves it.
they're captivated. Here's this seemingly ordinary guy channeling all their anger, resentment, this yearning for a return to greatness. And it was in that moment, in that beer hall, that Hitler discovered his true calling. Not as an artist, not as a soldier, but as a politician.
He stumbles into his destiny, in a way.
Hmm.
But one rant doesn't make a Hitler, does it?
No, it doesn't. But it planted a seed. He started studying oratory, meticulously crafting his image, his message. He even worked with a photographer, Heinrich Hoffmann, to cultivate a specific look.
Yeah, those excerpts about him practicing poses, gestures in the mirror, even trimming his mustache to that iconic style. It's fascinating.
It's like a prototype for the modern political campaign, isn't it? The importance of image, of presentation. But with Hitler, it went beyond just aesthetics. He understood that to truly captivate the masses, he needed more than words. He needed spectacle.
The infamous Nazi rallies.
Yeah.
The crowds, the banners, the sheer scale of it all. It's hard to imagine how anyone could walk away from that without feeling some sense of awe.
Awe, fear, excitement. It was a calculated manipulation of emotions. Those rallies were meticulously staged theatrical productions designed to project an image of power and intimidation.
And a key element of that stagecraft was the SA, the brown shirts, right? Hitler's own private army. Their presence alone at those rallies was a statement.
Absolutely, it was a very clear message. Dissent will not be tolerated. And it wasn't an empty threat either. The excerpts detail the SA disrupting political meetings, attacking Jewish people, silencing any opposition.
Violence is a tool of intimidation and as a way to control the narrative.
Precisely. Hitler, for all his horrific flaws, understood the power of propaganda. He knew that violence-generated headlines kept him in the public eye.
Even bad press is good press, as the saying goes.
Exactly. It kept people talking, kept them afraid, and most importantly, it normalized the Nazi Party's presence in everyday German life.
So we've got a charismatic, if terrifying leader, a carefully crafted image, a private army, and a message spreading like wildfire. What's the missing ingredient in this recipe for disaster?
Money. Lots of it. Building a movement, even one fueled by hate and fear, requires funding.
And that's where the industrialists come in, right?
Yeah.
The wealthy elite who saw an opportunity in Hitler's rise. So Hitler's got powerful friends with deep pockets. He's got the image, the message, the money, and a nation primed to listen. But how does he actually make that leap from popular politician to absolute dictator?
It's a chilling progression and unfortunately a perfect storm of cunning strategy and, well, terrible luck for the rest of the world. Because we can't forget, Germany in the early 30s was a tinderbox. The Great Depression had hit hard.
Unemployment through the roof, people desperate for solutions.
And who swoops in with promises of restoring Germany to its former glory, blaming their woes on scapegoats? It's a classic play, but incredibly effective.
It's scary how that cycle repeats itself throughout history. People are hurting, they want answers, and suddenly this guy with simple solutions seems like the answer.
Especially when those solutions play on existing fears and prejudices, which Hitler did masterfully. He understood that to grab absolute power, he had to break down their faith in the system itself.
So they turn to the strongman, the outsider who promises to fix it all. But how did he actually seize control? Was it a violent coup? Did he just take over?
It was more insidious than that. Hitler, despite all his talk, knew he needed a veneer of legitimacy. He had to at least appear to be working within the system.
So how does someone who despises democracy end up leading a democratic government?
Through a series of backroom deals and crises that, frankly, he exploited to his advantage. In 1933, despite the Nazi Party not having a majority, he gets appointed Chancellor.
So he's in charge, but not a dictator yet. What changed?
He moved fast. Just weeks later, the Reichstag fire happened.
When they blamed on the communists,
Yeah.
right? Convenient timing, to say the least.
Exactly. And using that as justification, Hitler pushes through the Enabling Act.
Which basically gave him unlimited power.
Essentially, yes. He could enact laws without Parliament's approval. Any opposition was swiftly dealt with. Democracy dismantled from within.
Just like that, it's over. And it's a chilling reminder that tyranny doesn't always announce itself with a bang. Sometimes it's quiet, insidious, hiding behind laws and exploiting fear.
And that's why understanding this period is so crucial, even today. It shows how fragile these institutions can be, how quickly extremism can take root.
The specifics are unique to that time and place. But those broader patterns, the fear-mongering, the scapegoating,
Yeah.
those feel eerily familiar, don't they?
They do, and that's what makes this exploration, dark as it is, so important. By understanding how a seemingly ordinary middle fueled by hate could orchestrate such horror, we equip ourselves to recognize those patterns wherever they emerge, hopefully to prevent history from rhyming quite so tragically next time.
Well said. A sobering thought to end on, but a necessary one. This deep dive into Hitler's rise reminds us that we can never take our freedoms for granted. We need to be vigilant, informed, and willing to stand up against injustice whenever we see it.